What if the same principles that guided Roman emperors and philosophers through wars, political turmoil, and personal loss could help you navigate the chaos of your career today? Picture this ancient wisdom, tested over 2,000 years, now sharpened into 26 precise maneuvers to help you dominate challenges, stay unshaken under pressure, and turn obstacles into opportunities. This isn't just philosophy, it's a battle-tested playbook for resilience, and it's called Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who ruled Rome at its peak, faced betrayals, plagues, and endless battles, yet he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the core of Stoicism, mastering your reactions, focusing on what you control, and thriving precisely when others crumble. Now think about the last time you felt overwhelmed, maybe a missed promotion, a toxic workplace, or a project that seemed doomed. What if you'd had a mental framework to not just survive but leverage that struggle? Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about channeling them with precision. Imagine walking into high-stakes meetings with unshakable calm, or turning criticism into fuel without a flicker of self-doubt. These aren't abstract ideas, they're skills, and they're broken down into actionable steps in this video. From reframing setbacks as training to disarming office politics with emotional discipline, each of these 26 maneuvers is a tool forged in the fires of real adversity. This isn't theory. It's what kept leaders like Seneca writing profound essays while exiled to a barren island, and Epictetus teaching philosophy after enduring slavery. Their struggles weren't smaller than yours, they were brutal, yet they found a way to not just endure but excel. That's the promise of Stoicism, not a life free of obstacles, but one where obstacles become the very things that elevate you. So whether you're facing a career slump, a ruthless competitor, or your own self-doubt, these principles are your advantage. By the end of this video, you'll have more than inspiration, you'll have a blueprint. Let's begin. The first and most powerful maneuver in the Stoic playbook is mastering the dichotomy of control. Picture a simple but life-changing question: what's truly in your power and what isn't? Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed his suffering as a slave into timeless wisdom, put it bluntly, some things are within our control, while others are not. Your opinions, your actions, your desires, these are yours to command. But external events, other people's choices, even outcomes you desperately want, those lie beyond your grasp. The moment you internalize this divide, a weight lifts. Stress doesn't vanish, but it loses its grip because you stop pouring energy into battles you can't win. Take a missed promotion. You prepared, delivered results, and still watched the opportunity go to someone else. The Stoic response isn't frustration or self-pity, it's a clear-eyed assessment. Could you control your effort? Absolutely. The final decision, not a chance. Wasting mental energy on the uncontrollable, the boss's bias, office politics, even luck only drains you. But focusing on what you can control, sharpening your skills, seeking feedback, or even choosing to leave for a better environment, that's where your power lies. Now think of a recent setback. How much time did you spend fixating on things outside your influence? The Stoic shift happens when you catch yourself in that loop and pivot. Maybe it's a client rejecting your proposal or a colleague taking credit for your work. The frustration is natural, but the wisdom comes in asking, what's my next move? Not how do I change what's already happened. This isn't resignation, it's strategy. By redirecting your focus to actionable steps, you reclaim agency. That's the secret of people who thrive under pressure. They don't fight the storm, they adjust their sails. Every challenge becomes a chance to practice this skill, and with each repetition, the habit of clarity grows stronger. Now, let's talk about a Stoic maneuver so powerful it can transform fear into foresight, Premeditatio Malorum, or the Premeditation of Evils. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. Picture a seasoned athlete visualizing every possible move of their opponent before stepping onto the field. That's what Seneca urged us to do with life's challenges. Rehearse them in advance, not to dwell on fear, but to dissolve its grip. He wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster." In other words, surprises hit harder because we're unprepared. But when you've already walked through the worst-case scenario in your mind, you're not caught off guard. You're ready. Think about a high-stakes client meeting. Toxic positivity might tell you, just stay positive and everything will work out. But Stoicism asks a tougher, more practical question. What if it doesn't? What if the client rejects your proposal or worse, attacks your credibility? Mentally rehearsing these scenarios isn't about inviting failure. It's about stripping away the shock factor. Imagine yourself sitting across from that client, hearing their objections and responding with calm precision. By the time the real moment arrives, you've already faced it a dozen times in your mind. The result, less panic, more poise. Here's where most people misunderstand this practice. Premeditatio Malorum isn't about expecting the worst, it's about removing the sting of the unexpected. Ancient generals used it to plan for battlefield disasters. Modern executives use it to navigate boardroom battles. The principle stays the same. When you've already seen the obstacle coming, you don't freeze, you adapt. So try this now. What's one challenge looming on your horizon? A difficult conversation, a make-or-break project deadline, or even a personal goal you're afraid to pursue. Close your eyes for a moment and walk through it, not as a passive victim, but as someone who's already decided how to respond. Visualize the obstacles, then visualize yourself overcoming them. That mental rehearsal is your armor, and here's the paradox: by preparing for the worst, you often prevent it, because when you're ready for turbulence, you fly steadier. Amor Fati, love of fate, sounds radical until you realize it's the secret behind every great comeback story. Imagine looking at a crushing setback and saying, "This too is for my benefit." That's not denial, it's defiance. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship, they embraced it as fuel, and Nietzsche later crystallized the idea when he wrote, "My formula for greatness is Amor Fati, not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it." Marcus Aurelius lived this daily, scribbling in his journals. The obstacle becomes the way, turning every frustration into a chance to practice virtue. Consider the startup founder whose app crashed on launch day. Panic, sure, at first, but then the pivot. Instead of fixating on the failure, they saw it as a forced stress test. User feedback exposed flaws they'd missed, and within months, the rebuilt product dominated the market. That's Amor Fati in action, the refusal to let reality dictate your response. The setback didn't break them, it remade them. Now, reflect on your own life. Recall a moment when things fell apart, a job loss, a rejection, a plan upended. What if you'd viewed it as the universe redirecting you? Maybe that layoff pushed you toward a career you'd never dared to pursue. Maybe the failed project taught you a lesson that saved you later. Stoicism doesn't ask you to pretend pain doesn't hurt. It challenges you to ask, what can this pain teach me? Here's the shift: stop asking, why me? And start asking, what's next? When you treat obstacles as invitations to grow, you stop fearing adversity and start leveraging it. The Roman general who lost a battle studied his mistakes and won the war. The artist whose work was rejected refined their craft and created a masterpiece. The pattern is clear. The people who thrive aren't luckier, they're just better at rewriting the story. So next time life throws you a curveball, don't duck, catch it and ask, how will this make me stronger? That's Amor Fati, not just accepting fate, but loving it for the fire it brings out of you. Voluntary discomfort, it sounds counterintuitive in a world obsessed with convenience, but the Stoics knew something we often forget. Strength isn't forged in comfort. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, put it plainly. How can someone become courageous if they only seek what feels easy? He didn't just preach this, he lived it, enduring exile and poverty without complaint, even turning those hardships into lessons. His philosophy was simple: deliberately seek small challenges to prepare for life's inevitable storms. Cold showers, skipped meals, or walking barefoot in winter weren't punishments, they were training exercises. The goal wasn't suffering for its own sake, but proving to yourself that discomfort won't break you. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same principle in Navy SEAL training, elite athletics, and even Silicon Valley's obsession with discomfort zones. Why? Because comfort is the enemy of growth. When you never test your limits, the first unexpected hardship, a job loss, a health scare, a financial hit feels catastrophic. But when you've voluntarily faced smaller struggles, you develop a resilience reserve. Think of it like emotional calluses. The more you expose yourself to friction, the less life's rough edges cut deep. Here's how to apply this now. Start small. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Swap your morning coffee for water once a week, or leave your phone behind during lunch. These aren't grand gestures, but they rewire your relationship with discomfort. Then, level up. Volunteer for that daunting project at work, the one everyone avoids because it's complex or messy. The discomfort of tackling it head-on builds the same mental muscle the Stoics prized. But here's the key: don't just endure these challenges, interrogate them. When you feel the urge to hit snooze, ask, what if I got up now? When you're hungry between meals, notice the impulse to snack and pause. That moment of resistance is where growth happens. Musonius Rufus called this the contest with yourself, and winning it daily prepares you for life's bigger battles. So ask yourself, what comfort could you voluntarily give up this week? Maybe it's sleeping on the floor for a night to appreciate your bed, or fasting for 12 hours to savor your next meal. The specifics don't matter, the mindset does. Every time you choose discomfort over convenience, you're not just building toughness, you're reclaiming agency. Because the person who can handle uncertainty, delay gratification, and thrive outside their comfort zone isn't just resilient, they're unstoppable. Picture yourself stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, late for an important meeting. Your knuckles whiten on the steering wheel, your jaw clenches. But here's the Stoic twist: the traffic jam isn't the problem. Your judgment about it is. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled an empire while writing philosophical meditations, put it bluntly: take away your opinion about what's happened, and you take away the complaint. That's the essence of objective judgment, peeling back the emotional layers to see reality as it is, not as your frustration paints it. Let's break this down. The traffic isn't making you angry. You're choosing anger by labeling the situation as unbearable. The Stoics called this assent, the moment you attach value to an external event. But what if you reframed it? Instead of "this is ruining my day," try "this is a chance to practice patience." Suddenly, the same scenario becomes a mental gym. This isn't wishful thinking, it's cognitive recalibration. Ancient Stoics trained for it like athletes, and you can too. Now shift this to the workplace. A colleague takes credit for your idea in a team meeting. Your gut reaction might be outrage or resentment, but pause, strip away the emotional narrative, and what's left? Facts. They spoke. You feel overlooked. The reactive mindset spirals into gossip or confrontation. The proactive mindset asks, what's within my control? Maybe it's documenting contributions next time, or privately addressing the issue with clarity, not accusation. Objectivity doesn't mean passivity, it means power. You're no longer at the mercy of someone else's actions, you're steering your response. Here's your challenge. Pick one irritation from this week. Maybe it's a micromanaging boss or a missed deadline. Now dissect it like a Stoic. Write down the raw facts, then separate your judgments. Ask, did this situation force me to feel a certain way, or did I choose that reaction? The gap between event and emotion is where your freedom lies. Seneca, who faced betrayal and exile, wrote, "A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver or doer." Translate that to modern life. The gift of a setback is the chance to exercise wisdom. Objective judgment turns obstacles into opportunities. It's the difference between seeing a rejected proposal as a failure or as feedback to refine your approach. The traffic jam, the office conflict, the personal disappointment, they are all neutral until you assign meaning. Master this, and you'll stop being a prisoner of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your responses. That's not just philosophy, it's liberation. The view from above isn't just a mental exercise, it's a reality check wired into Stoicism's core. Marcus Aurelius, staring down the weight of an empire, would pause and remind himself, think of the whole universe and how small your share of it is. He wasn't being dismissive, he was recalibrating. When office politics or career setbacks feel all-consuming, this maneuver pulls you out of the fog. Picture your current stressor, a tense email chain, a rivalry with a coworker, then mentally zoom out. See your building from street level, then from a satellite's view, then further until the entire planet is a speck. Suddenly, that conflict shrinks to its true proportion. This isn't about diminishing your struggles, it's about contextualizing them. Ancient Stoics called this cosmic perspective, and modern science backs it. Astronauts describe the overview effect, a profound shift in awareness when seeing Earth from space. Petty disputes dissolve when you grasp the fragility and unity of our pale blue dot. You don't need a rocket to harness this. Try it now. Close your eyes and fast forward 10 years. Will this disagreement matter? Will anyone remember who won that argument? The answer isn't just humbling, it's freeing. Here's how to apply it. Next time you're caught in workplace drama, pause and ask, how would I describe this situation to my future self? The colleague who undermines you, the project that flopped, these become anecdotes, not catastrophes. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not for publication, but to ground himself in this truth. Soon you will have forgotten the world, and soon the world will have forgotten you. That's not nihilism, it's liberation. When you stop overestimating the weight of momentary friction, you conserve energy for what truly lasts: growth, relationships, legacy. So here's your challenge. Pick one current stressor, a missed deadline, a harsh critique, and mentally project yourself to the end of your career. Look back. What advice would older, wiser you give about this moment? Likely it's not obsess over every slight, but focus on what made you better. The view from above isn't escapism, it's clarity. Because when you see your life as part of something vast, you stop sweating the small stuff and start steering toward what matters. Memento Mori, remember you must die, sounds morbid until you realize it's the ultimate clarifier. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who saw life stripped to its essence, wrote, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." His point wasn't about counting days, but making days count. Steve Jobs, standing before Stanford graduates in 2005, echoed this ancient wisdom when he said, remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. That's the paradox. Confronting mortality doesn't shrink your ambition, it sharpens it. Think about how you'd work if this were your last year. Would you tolerate that soul-draining commute? Stay silent in meetings to avoid rocking the boat. Chase promotions for status instead of purpose. The Stoics used Momento Mori not as a morbid fixation, but as a focusing lens. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now," he wasn't dwelling on death, he was demanding urgency in how he lived. The clock isn't your enemy, it's your accountability partner. Now apply this to your career. Picture two paths, one where you play it safe, conform to expectations, and mute your potential to avoid risk. The other where you chase what truly matters, projects that ignite you, relationships that nourish you, a legacy that outlasts you. Memento Mori strips away the illusion of endless tomorrows, forcing the question, if not now, when? Jobs didn't just talk about this, he lived it. After his cancer diagnosis, he doubled down on creating revolutionary products, saying, "Death is very likely the single best invention of life." Here's how to practice this without gloom. Each morning, ask, what would today look like if it mattered? Not in a dramatic bucket list way, but in the quiet choices, the email you send with care, the idea you voice despite fear, the colleague you mentor. At day's end, reflect, did I live today or just endure it? The Stoics didn't use mortality to scare themselves, they used it to wake themselves up. So try this exercise. Write down 3 things you'd stop doing immediately if you had 1 year left. Then 3 you'd start. The gap between those lists is your compass. Memento Mori isn't about dying, it's about removing the distractions that make you forget you're alive. When every meeting, every project, every interaction carries the weight of meaning, you don't just build a career. You build a life that's unshakably yours. Journaling wasn't just a habit for the Stoics, it was their secret weapon. Seneca, the philosopher who tutored emperors and outlasted tyrants, wrote nightly letters to his friend Lucilius that doubled as self-reflection exercises. His advice, assess your whole day before you sleep. Not just the highlights, but the stumbles, the moment you snapped at a coworker, the project delay you took personally, the worry spiral you fed instead of quieting. This wasn't about self-criticism, it was about calibration. Imagine ending each day not with mindless scrolling, but with a 5-minute audit of what strengthened or weakened your resilience. Here's how to steal this practice. Start with 2 questions. What did I truly control today? And where did my reactions miss the mark? The first cuts through illusions. That looming deadline, you couldn't control the client's last-minute changes, but you could control your preparation or communication. The second question shines a light on emotional autopilot. Maybe you rolled your eyes during a meeting or bit back at constructive feedback. The goal isn't guilt, it's awareness. Seneca called this digesting your day, extracting nutrients from both successes and failures. Now let's make it practical. Grab any notebook or open a blank document. Each night, divide the page into 3 columns: events, control, and response. In events, jot down key moments: the presentation, the traffic jam, the Slack argument. Under control, note what was truly yours to command, your focus, your tone, your next move. The response column is where wisdom grows. Maybe you realize you wasted energy resenting a colleague's promotion instead of congratulating them and refining your own skills. That's the pivot. The magic happens over time. After a week, patterns emerge. You'll see how often you blame external factors for internal turbulence, or how tiny adjustments, pausing before replying to emails, reframing delays as breathing room, compound into steadier days. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations wasn't some lofty treatise. It was his personal journal filled with raw reminders like, "Stop letting yourself be pulled like a puppet by selfish impulses." Your journal can be the same, a private training ground where you wrestle lessons from chaos. Commit to this for 7 days, not as a chore, but as an experiment. The Stoics believed the unexamined life was the wasted one. Your career, your relationships, your peace of mind, they're all shaped by daily micro-choices. Journaling turns those invisible battles into visible victories. By the end of the week, you won't just know your triggers, you'll have rewritten them. And that's when philosophy stops being words on a page and starts being your competitive edge. The discipline of action isn't about grand gestures. It's about the quiet, daily choices that stitch your character together. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned his enslavement into a masterclass on freedom, laid down a razor-sharp rule. First say what you would be, then do what you have to do. In other words, your actions aren't just tasks, they're votes for the person you're becoming. Imagine standing at a crossroads where your boss pressures you to fudge numbers for a client. The easy path says, just this once, but the Stoic path asks, what kind of professional do I claim to be? That gap between your self-image and your choices is where integrity either grows or withers. Take a real-world example. A junior engineer discovers a safety flaw in a product, but revealing it could delay the launch and anger senior leadership. The discipline of action doesn't waffle, it aligns. If honesty is a core value, the engineer documents the issue and escalates it, regardless of consequences. The Stoics wouldn't call this bravery, they'd call it consistency. Seneca put it bluntly, if you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich. Substitute opinion with external approval, and the message stings. Betray your values to please others, and you'll bankrupt your self-respect. Now turn the lens inward. What's one action you've avoided because you feared judgment? Maybe it's pitching an unconventional idea at work, setting boundaries with a demanding colleague, or leaving a lucrative job that clashes with your ethics. The cost of inaction isn't just missed opportunities, it's the slow erosion of your agency. Every time you silence your voice to keep the peace, you hand over a piece of your autonomy. The Stoic remedy is simple but unforgiving. Act as if your future self is watching, because they are. Here's the practice. Tonight, replay your day like a film, but with a twist. Pause at every decision point and ask, did this action reflect the person I aspire to be? Not perfect, but progressing. The sales call where you overstated benefits, the meeting where you nodded along to bad ideas. These aren't failures if you mine them for truth. The discipline of action isn't about flawlessness. It's about course correcting before the drift becomes irreversible. Ultimately, this is how Stoicism bridges philosophy and life. It's not enough to admire courage in theory. You must exercise it when your palms sweat. Values aren't decorations, they're directions. So next time you're torn between convenience and conviction, remember, the world will judge you either way. The only question is, will you let its verdict drown out your own? Sympathia, the Stoic concept of interconnectedness, cuts through the myth of the lone wolf. Marcus Aurelius didn't just muse about this, he ruled an empire with it, writing, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." That's the heart of Sympathia, recognizing that your success is woven into the success of others. Modern workplaces often glorify the hero mentality, the individual who grinds alone, but Stoicism asks a harder question. What's the cost of that isolation? Teams fractured by silos, ideas stifled by ego, burnout fueled by the delusion that you must carry everything alone. Consider a tech startup on the brink of collapse. Engineers blamed designers for missed deadlines. Sales teams resented product teams for unrealistic promises. the CEO, a Stoic practitioner, didn't host a trust-fall retreat. Instead, she framed their crisis with Sympathia. We're not rivals, we're limbs of the same body. Then she did something radical. She had engineers shadow sales calls and marketers attend sprint planning. Within weeks, empathy replaced blame. The engineer who heard a client's frustration first and stopped obsessing over perfect code and prioritized usable features. The marketer who saw development hurdles stopped overpromising. Conflict didn't vanish, it became productive. This isn't about forced harmony. Ancient Stoics like hierarchs visualized society as concentric circles, self at the center, then family, community, and humanity outward. The goal wasn't to erase individuality but to stretch your circle of care. Apply this to your next team meeting. When tensions rise, ask, what's the shared mission here? Not how do I win, but how do we elevate each other? A sales team hitting targets isn't a collection of individual quotas, it's an orchestra. The violinist doesn't resent the cellist, they harmonize. Now, your turn. Identify one friction point in your work relationships, maybe a department you dismiss as out of touch or a colleague you avoid. Tomorrow, take one step to bridge that gap. Share credit publicly, invite them to brainstorm, ask, what's your biggest hurdle right now? Sympathia thrives on small, deliberate acts. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome but wrote, men exist for the sake of one another. Not as obstacles, but as allies. Your career isn't a solo sprint, it's a relay, and the baton only moves forward when hands trust each other. Imagine holding a rejection letter that crushes your dream, then using it as kindling to ignite something greater. That's exactly what J.K. Rowling did when 12 publishers dismissed Harry Potter. Instead of surrendering to despair, she doubled down, later reflecting, rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. Her story isn't just resilience, it's Stoicism in action. Marcus Aurelius coined the phrase, the impediment becomes the way, but Rowling lived it. Every no forced her to refine her pitch. Every closed door taught her persistence. By the time the 13th publisher said yes, she hadn't just gotten lucky, she'd transformed rejection into her competitive edge. This mindset shift is what separates those broken by barriers from those who use them as stepping stones. The Stoics didn't see obstacles as roadblocks, they saw them as raw material. When a storm sinks your ship, you can curse the waves or build a raft from the wreckage. Take the entrepreneur whose prototype failed spectacularly. Instead of hiding the embarrassment, they dissected the failure publicly, documenting lessons in a blog that went viral. That transparency attracted investors who admired their grit. The obstacle public failure became their most powerful marketing tool. Now, let's make this personal. Grab a pen and list 3 challenges weighing on you right now. A strained work relationship, a skill gap, a project that stalled. Now, channel Marcus Aurelius. What if this isn't happening to you, but for you? That difficult colleague could be training you in patience or negotiation. The skill gap might reveal where to focus your learning, the stalled project. A chance to pivot toward something more aligned with your strengths. Obstacles don't just test us, they direct us. Here's the key, don't just reframe passively. Actively mine each challenge for its hidden utility. When the Roman general Cincinnatus was called from his farm to save Rome, he didn't resent the interruption. He saw it as proof of his capability. Your obstacles are similar. That late-night work crisis isn't just exhausting. It's revealing your ability to perform under pressure. The client who demands revisions isn't being petty, they're sharpening your attention to detail. Try this exercise. For each obstacle on your list, write 2 ways it could secretly serve you. Maybe that budget cut forces creativity, or the industry downturn pushes you to network outside your comfort zone. The goal isn't to pretend hardships don't hurt. It's to reclaim agency over how they shape you. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire plagued by war and plague, yet he wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting." Your obstacles aren't exceptions to your path, they're part of it. So next time you hit a wall, don't just look for a way around it. Ask, how could this wall become my foundation? That's how barriers stop being stop signs and start becoming launchpads. The art of silence isn't about holding your tongue, it's about wielding it with precision. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed adversity into wisdom, laid down a razor-sharp rule. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. But here's the deeper truth. Silence isn't just restraint, it's strategy. Picture the colleague who dominates every meeting with opinions but rarely lands promotions. Contrast them with the quiet observer who speaks only to pivot discussions or diffuse tensions. One drowns in noise, the other commands attention with scarcity. Consider the modern workplace minefield. The group chat buzzing with gossip, the impulsive email fired off in frustration, the meeting derailed by half-formed thoughts. Stoicism treats words like currency. Every sentence spent recklessly depletes your influence. When Seneca advised, "Speech is the mirror of the soul," he wasn't just preaching morality, he was offering a tactical advantage. Your silence in the face of office drama isn't weakness, it's a force field against pettiness. Your pause before replying to criticism isn't hesitation, it's the space where wisdom outpaces emotion. Now recall a moment when silence served you better than words. Maybe it was biting back a sarcastic remark during a heated debate, only to watch your restraint earn respect. Or deleting that angry draft email and realizing by morning the conflict didn't merit your energy. The Stoics called this prosoch mindful attention to impulses before they hijack your judgment. In a world addicted to hot takes and instant reactions, the discipline of silence becomes your superpower. Here's how to practice it. Next time you're tempted to vent about a coworker, ask Epictetus' question, will this improve the silence? If your words won't clarify, resolve, or uplift, they're likely self-indulgence masquerading as communication. Apply this to digital habits too. Before hitting send on any message, insert a 5-minute buffer. That gap between impulse and action is where Stoic discipline lives, but don't mistake silence for passivity. When Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, he didn't retaliate with words, he responded with actions that redefined loyalty. Your quietest moments can be your most potent. The executive who listens while others jockey for airtime spots the unspoken tensions shaping decisions. The teammate who asks one piercing question after a marathon meeting cuts through the noise like a scalpel. So, challenge yourself this week. For every 3 sentences you speak, let one stay unspoken. Notice how silence amplifies your presence rather than diminishing it. The Stoics knew what modern science confirms: the most powerful people in the room aren't the loudest. They're the ones who choose their words like arrows, releasing only when the target is clear. In a world drowning in words, your silence isn't empty, it's eloquent. Practicing poverty sounds extreme until you realize it's the ultimate stress test for your resilience. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who advised Emperor Nero, deliberately set aside days where he'd eat nothing but lentils, wear coarse clothing, and sleep on a hard bed. His goal wasn't self-punishment, it was inoculation. By voluntarily stepping into discomfort, he proved to himself that the worst-case scenario wouldn't break him. Modern life bombards us with the opposite message: more convenience, more upgrades, more instant gratification. But what happens when the tide turns? When the job loss hits, the economy stumbles, or the credit card bill spirals, That's when the muscle memory of practicing poverty pays off. Think of it like fire drills. No one expects a blaze to erupt, but rehearsing the escape route ensures you won't freeze when it matters. Financial resilience works the same way. A no-spend weekend might mean skipping takeout, unplugging subscriptions, or commuting by bike instead of rideshares. The point isn't deprivation, it's discovering how much you've conflated wants with needs. When you realize you can thrive without the daily latte or the impulse Amazon purchase, something shifts. Fear of loss loosens its grip, and you start making choices from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. Here's the twist: Seneca's lentil days weren't about embracing misery. They were about exposing the illusion that happiness depends on externals. Fast forward to today, and you'll find Silicon Valley CEOs and Wall Street traders using similar tactics. They'll wear the same outfit daily to conserve decision energy, or live on a fraction of their income to avoid lifestyle inflation. The lesson: comfort is a slippery slope. The more you acclimate to luxury, the more it becomes a requirement rather than a reward. So try this experiment. Pick one luxury you'd never question, maybe streaming services, dining out, or that premium gym membership, and press pause for a month. Notice what arises: boredom, frustration, or even creativity as you rediscover free hobbies or home-cooked meals. The Stoics called this Premeditatio Malorum, applied to wealth, rehearsing loss to appreciate what you have and reduce dependency on what you don't need. The real payoff comes when life forces austerity upon you. The entrepreneur whose business fails, the employee facing a pay cut. They'll panic less if they've already proven they can adapt. Practicing poverty isn't about rejecting success. It's about ensuring success doesn't make you fragile. So ask yourself, what's one comfort you're afraid to live without? Now imagine life without it, not as a punishment, but as a reminder of your own adaptability. That's the Stoic secret. When you know you can handle less, you stop fearing loss and start mastering freedom. Virtue wasn't some abstract ideal for the Stoics, it was a daily operating system. They distilled excellence into 4 pillars: wisdom to see reality clearly, courage to act despite fear, justice to serve the common good, and temperance to master impulses. Picture these not as lofty philosophies, but as tools sharper than any app on your phone. Take the whistleblower who risks everything to expose corporate fraud. Wisdom helps them discern the truth. Courage steels them against retaliation. Justice demands they protect the public. Temperance keeps their anger from clouding the mission. That's Stoic virtue in action, not just thinking right, but doing right when it costs you. Let's break these down with modern grit. Wisdom isn't about memorizing quotes. It's the discipline to question your own assumptions. Like the manager who realizes their lazy employee is actually drowning in unclear priorities, they pivot from blame to solution. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's sending the hard email, having the awkward conversation, or walking away from a toxic job despite the uncertainty. Justice extends beyond laws. It's the small choices, like giving credit to the intern whose idea saved the project, or refusing to exploit a loophole because it harms others. And temperance, that's silencing the voice that says, just one more scroll, when you should be prepping for tomorrow's presentation. Now, imagine applying these like a weekly audit. Grab your phone and rate the past 7 days on each virtue. Did wisdom guide your decisions, or did biases steer you? Did courage falter when you avoided that necessary conflict? Were there moments justice called and you looked away? How often did temperance lose to instant gratification? The Stoics didn't judge these scores, they used them as mirrors. Epictetus taught, first learn the meaning of what you say and then speak. Translation, don't call yourself virtuous until your actions align. Here's the challenge. Pick one virtue you scored low on this week. For wisdom, it might be recognizing how confirmation bias shaped your view of a rival's proposal. For temperance, maybe it's admitting how emotional exhaustion led to snapping at your team. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness, because virtue isn't a trophy, it's a compass. And every time you choose wisdom over ego, courage over comfort, justice over convenience, or temperance over indulgence, you're not just following Stoic principles, you're building a life that can't be shaken by external storms. There's a hidden gap between what happens to you and how you respond, a sliver of space where your freedom lives. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz, called this the space to choose, and the Stoics knew it well. Imagine your boss sends a scathing email criticizing your work. Your pulse races, fingers hover over the keyboard. That's the stimulus, but the reaction. That's where your power kicks in. Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." The Stoics didn't just preach this, they engineered it into daily practice. Take breath counting, a simple but razor-sharp tool. Before replying to that email, pause and inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Repeat twice. In those 12 seconds, something shifts. The heat of the moment cools, and you spot the trap, reacting from ego instead of strategy. One tech CEO swears by a 24-hour reply rule for emotionally charged messages. He drafts responses when fired up, then lets them marinate overnight. 90% of the time, he deletes or rewrites them by morning. That's not avoidance, it's emotional jiu-jitsu, using the weight of haste to throw itself. Now think of your last knee-jerk reaction. Maybe it was snapping at a colleague or rushing to defend yourself in a meeting. What if you'd inserted even 5 seconds of silence? Ancient Stoics trained for this like athletes. Epictetus, born a slave, faced provocations daily. His advice: if someone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself but reply, yes, and they don't know the half of it, here are my other faults. Defang the attack by leaning into it, and suddenly the power dynamic flips. Here's your challenge. Tomorrow, pick 3 moments to pause before reacting. A rude comment, a frustrating email, an unexpected request. Each is a chance to stretch that space between stimulus and response. Count breaths, walk around the block, even type out your raw reaction in a draft you'll never send. The goal isn't to suppress emotion, it's to sovereign it. Because when you lengthen that pause, you stop being a puppet of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your next move. That's where true control begins, not in changing what happens, but in mastering what happens next. Negative visualization might sound like tempting fate, but the Stoics saw it as emotional armor. Seneca, the philosopher who tutored Nero, regularly practiced what he called rehearsing exile, imagining the loss of his wealth, status, even his life. His reasoning was razor-sharp. He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. This isn't pessimism, it's psychological vaccination. By mentally walking through worst-case scenarios, you strip them of their power to shock you. Think of it like fire drills for the soul. When you visualize losing your job, not in a panicked spiral, but with calm curiosity, you start asking different questions. What skills would I lean on? Who in my network could help? What frugal habits would kick in? Suddenly, the monster under the bed looks smaller because you've switched on the lights. A tech executive client of mine used this when his startup was floundering. Instead of drowning in anxiety, he spent 10 minutes each morning journaling answers to, if we fail, what's my plan B? 6 months later, when funding fell through, he didn't crumble, he pivoted smoothly to consulting, using contacts he'd already reconnected with during his mental rehearsals. Here's the paradox: visualizing loss doesn't create fear, it dissolves it. When Seneca pictured living in a cramped attic after his palace was seized, he wasn't wallowing. He was proving to himself that even stripped bare, he'd retain his wit, his philosophy, his inner freedom. Apply this to your career. That promotion you're fixated on, what if it never comes? The answer isn't despair. It's realizing you'd adapt, maybe even thrive in unexpected ways. One finance professional I coached feared layoffs until she mentally rehearsed them. That exercise revealed her backup plan, freelance coaching, which she'd secretly loved but never pursued. 2 years later, when restructuring hit, she transitioned seamlessly and doubled her happiness. Try this tonight. Before bed, pick one pillar of your stability: your job, your savings, your health. Close your eyes and imagine it's gone, not to scare yourself, but to uncover hidden strengths. Where would you turn? What's the first step you'd take? The moment you realize you're more resilient than you thought, gratitude for what you have grows sharper. That's the alchemy of negative visualization. By touching the bottom in your mind, you stop fearing the fall and start seeing the net you've woven without noticing. The Stoics knew something modern psychology confirms. Security isn't the absence of threat, but the presence of adaptability. When you've already walked through the fire in your imagination, the real sparks lose their power to burn. So don't wait for crisis to force this clarity. Rehearse your resilience now and watch how it transforms not just your fears, but your appreciation for the ordinary blessings you've stopped seeing. Cato the Younger didn't just walk the talk, he bled it. When Rome's political elite mocked him for wearing outdated clothing, he doubled down, appearing in the Senate with his tunic deliberately threadbare. His message wasn't about fashion, it was a slap to the face of vanity. "Let them stare at my cloak," he said, "while they ignore the corruption under their togas." In an era obsessed with status symbols, Cato weaponized indifference to reputation. That's the Stoic stance in its rawest form. Character isn't what others see, it's what you do when no one's watching. Fast forward to today, where social media metrics masquerade as merit, and we've lost the plot. Every like, every follower count, every viral moment whispers the same lie: your value depends on their validation. Think about the last time you hesitated to post an opinion because it might ruffle feathers. Or worse, when you crafted a persona online that bore little resemblance to your offline self. The Stoics would call this self-betrayal. Epictetus put it bluntly: if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. Translation: let them think you're out of touch if it means staying in alignment with your principles. The entrepreneur who turns down a lucrative deal because it conflicts with their ethics isn't losing their banking integrity. The employee who speaks truth in a meeting despite the room's discomfort isn't naive, they're practicing Cato's defiance. Now audit your own choices. When did you last bite your tongue to keep the peace, or laugh at a joke that crossed a line just to fit in? These micro-surrenders compound. Each time you prioritize perception over principle, you dilute your character. But here's the flip side. Every time you choose authenticity, whether it's declining to gossip in the break room or refusing to fudge numbers for a client, you're depositing into an account no algorithm can measure. Social media didn't invent this struggle, it just amplified it. Ancient Rome had its own influencers, orators who shaped public opinion with slick speeches. The difference: Cato and the Stoics didn't just resist the game, they rewrote the rules. They measured success by an internal scorecard. Did I act with courage today? Did I choose justice over convenience? That's the question to carry into your next scroll session. Before posting, pause and ask, is this me, or the me I think they'll approve of? The gap between those answers is where your power lies. So here's the challenge. For 1 week, track every time you alter your behavior for external validation. The meeting where you nodded along instead of voicing dissent. The photo you edited before uploading. Then ask Cotto's question, what would I do if I weren't afraid of their judgment? Start small. Maybe it's sharing an unpopular but thoughtful take in a team chat, or wearing what truly comforts you, not what trends dictate. Reputation is weather, it shifts. Character is climate, it defines the landscape of your life, and storms pass but bedrock remains. Marcus Aurelius faced empire-wide plagues, betrayals, and barbarian invasions, yet his private writings reveal an unshakable calm. The secret, his inner citadel, a mental fortress he built through disciplined thought. Picture this: amidst the chaos of ancient Rome, he'd retreat into his mind, repeating truths like, "The things that disturb us are not the events, but our judgments about them." That wasn't wishful thinking, it was armor, and you can forge the same. Start with your daily commute, a modern battleground of honking horns and delayed trains. Instead of white-knuckling the steering wheel or seething over crowded platforms, construct your own peace mantra, not a vague affirmation, but a stoic sword strike to chaos. Try Marcus Blade's sharp phrase, "No one can harm my character without my consent." Say it aloud 3 times when stress spikes. Feel the shift. You're not denying the traffic jam, you're reclaiming your response to it. This isn't escapism, it's mental architecture. Here's why it works. The brain craves patterns. Every time you anchor frustration to a mantra, you're rewiring neural pathways. A study at Massachusetts General Hospital found that just 8 weeks of mindful repetition reduced amygdala activity, the brain's panic button, by 19%. The Stoics didn't have fMRI machines, but they knew this truth. What you repeat inwardly shapes your outward reality. Now tailor your mantra to your battles. If office politics drain you, try Epictetus' version. They can't control my choices, only their own. If perfectionism paralyzes you, borrow Seneca's. Progress, not perfection, is the aim. The key is specificity. Generic, stay positive platitudes crumble under pressure. Stoic mantras are designed to hold. Test it today. Next time a client berates you or a coworker undermines you, don't rehearse comebacks in your head, recite your mantra instead. Watch how the emotional charge dims. Marcus didn't build his citadel in a day. He laid each brick through daily practice. Your mind is neither a prison nor a playground. It's a fortress waiting for your command. Start constructing. Seneca dropped a truth bomb 2,000 years ago that still shatters modern illusions. Life is long if you know how to use it. Not how to fill it, how to use it. The average person will spend 11 years staring at screens, 4 years cleaning, and a staggering 26 years asleep. But here's the Stoic twist. The problem isn't time's scarcity. It's our willingness to trade it for trivialities. That meeting that could have been an email, the hour lost doom-scrolling before bed, the 30-minute commute you spent rehearsing grievances instead of listening to an audiobook that sharpens your skills. Those aren't just minutes wasted, they're fragments of your life surrendered without a fight. Consider the modern obsession with busyness as a badge of honor. The executive who brags about back-to-back meetings from dawn till dusk isn't demonstrating productivity. They're confessing they've lost control of their attention. Contrast that with the Stoic approach to deep work, carving out uninterrupted blocks for what Marcus Aurelius called the one thing, the highest value activity only you can do. For a software developer, that might mean silencing notifications to debug critical code. For a writer, it's deleting social media apps during manuscript hours. The principle stays the same. Guard your focus like a Roman sentry at the gate, because every distraction isn't just stealing your time, it's stealing your life. Try this audit tonight. Take a blank sheet and divide it into 3 columns: essential, useful, and trivial. Now replay yesterday hour by hour. That quick team sync that dragged, was it essential or just habitual? The 30 minutes debating office politics at lunch, did it move you forward or just drain you? The Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they understood the tyranny of trivial pursuits. Seneca warned, "You're scared of dying, but tell me, is the life you're leading really living?" Here's the pivot point. Stoic time management isn't about squeezing more in. It's about ruthlessly cutting what doesn't serve. A tech CEO client of mine discovered she spent 4 hours weekly reviewing reports no one read. She replaced them with a 5-minute stand-up and reclaimed 16 hours a month, enough to learn Spanish for her Mexico expansion. That's the Stoic edge. Treating time not as an infinite resource, but as the one currency you can't earn back. So ask yourself, what's one time waster you'll eliminate starting tomorrow? Maybe it's turning off Slack notifications for 2 golden morning hours, or replacing your nightly Netflix autoplay with a chapter of philosophy. Every yes to distraction is a no to your potential. The Stoics didn't leave this to chance. They scheduled their philosophy readings like we schedule meetings, because they knew the person who controls their attention controls their destiny. Your calendar isn't just a log of appointments, it's the blueprint of your legacy. Start building wisely. The reserve clause isn't about doubting your goals, it's about respecting reality. The Stoics called it fate permitting, a simple but radical addition to any plan. I'll launch this product by June, fate permitting. I'll land that promotion this year, fate permitting. This tiny phrase does 2 things. It acknowledges the unpredictability of life while keeping you firmly in the driver's seat. Picture a tech startup that spent 18 months perfecting a fitness app, only to watch a global pandemic shift priorities overnight. Instead of clinging to their original roadmap, they pivoted to remote wellness tools, not as a failure, but as adaptability in action, their new tagline. We build for health, fate permitting. Here's why this works. When you marry determination with flexibility, you stop seeing obstacles as personal failures and start treating them as data points. The founder who says, "I'll scale to 10 cities this year unless the economy contracts," isn't being passive, they're being strategic. They've already mentally rehearsed their pivot points. Contrast that with the entrepreneur who ties their self-worth to rigid outcomes. When market forces shift, they don't adapt, they implode. Try reframing one of your current goals with the reserve clause right now. Instead of, "I'll double my sales quota," try, "I'll double my sales quota if demand holds." Notice how that slight shift removes the emotional landmine. You're still committing fully, but you've built in a pressure release valve for circumstances beyond your control. A financial planner I know teaches clients to set if-then goals. I'll max out my retirement contributions if my freelance income stays steady, otherwise I'll adjust my budget here and here. This isn't hedging your bets, it's honoring the complexity of real life. The magic lies in the balance. The Stoics weren't advocating wishy-washy goals, they were masters of focused effort. Marcus Aurelius still boarded ships to lead battles, and Seneca still penned letters knowing exile might come. But they did so with open hands, ready to recalibrate when storms hit. Your career deserves the same clarity. That project timeline, that career milestone, that business target, pour your energy into them, but write them in pencil, not stone. Because the person who plans tightly but adapts swiftly isn't just resilient, they're unstoppable. Picture someone who remains unshaken when criticized unfairly, not because they don't care, but because their self-worth isn't up for debate. That's the Stoic sage in action, an ideal to aspire toward, not some distant myth. The ancient texts describe this figure as someone who meets chaos with clarity, injustice with resolve, and flattery with indifference. But here's the good news. You don't need to be perfect to start modeling their traits. Think of it like building a mosaic, one small tile at a time. Every moment you choose patience over defensiveness or curiosity over outrage, you're placing another piece. Consider a mentor you've admired, perhaps a manager who stayed composed during a product recall, or a teacher who turned a classroom revolt into a lesson on accountability. What made them stand out wasn't superhuman restraint, it was their deliberate habits. They likely practiced what Epictetus preached. If someone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself but reply, they must not know my other faults, or they wouldn't have mentioned only these. Humor disarms, humility disarms even more. Now reflect, who in your orbit embodies this calm? Maybe it's the coworker who listens fully before reacting, even when interrupted, or the friend who treats setbacks like puzzles to solve rather than disasters to mourn. These modern sages might not quote Marcus Aurelius, but their actions speak Stoicism fluently. The key is observation, noticing how they pause before responding, or how they reframe obstacles as invitations to grow. Then the real work begins, borrowing their tools until they become your own. Try this exercise. Next time you face criticism, channel your inner sage. Instead of drafting that fiery rebuttal, ask, what part of this might hold truth? Not to self-flagellate, but to mine feedback for growth. The sage doesn't ignore pain, they transmute it into wisdom. Your mentor didn't become unflappable overnight. They built that resilience one intentional response at a time. Now it's your turn. Who's your model, and more importantly, what's one trait of theirs you'll practice today? Marcus Aurelius had a razor-sharp question for cutting through life's noise. Is this necessary? He'd confront every distraction, every petty grievance with this blade, separating what merits his energy from what deserves his indifference. Modern workplaces are minefields of trivia, the colleague who always steals your stapler, the passive-aggressive email chains, the water-cooler gossip about who's in the boss's good graces this week. These aren't just annoyances, they're energy traps. The Stoic move isn't to engage or even resist, it's to render them irrelevant by asking Marcus' question with brutal honesty. Take office politics, the unspoken hierarchies, the jockeying for visibility. It's easy to get sucked in, mistaking visibility for value. But here's the reality check. In 5 years, no one will remember who sat where in the quarterly meeting photo. The energy spent decoding subtle slights or positioning yourself in emails could be channeled into mastering a skill that outlasts any organizational shuffle. A client of mine, a mid-level manager, once fretted for weeks over being excluded from an inconclusive strategy session. When she applied Marcus' filter, will this exclusion impact my ability to deliver results? The answer freed her. She redirected that anxiety into mentoring a junior team member who later became her strongest ally in a department reshuffle. The power lies in redefining what trivia means. It's not just about ignoring petty annoyances. It's about recognizing how they distort your focus. Think of your attention as a spotlight. Shine it on office gossip and you illuminate drama. Train it on your craft and you illuminate growth. The Stoics called this prosoch vigilance over where your mind dwells. When Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish in matters of no consequence," he wasn't endorsing apathy. He was offering a strategy. Let others waste their time keeping score while you quietly level up. Here's your challenge today. Identify one trivial annoyance you'd normally react to: the coworker who interrupts you, the nitpicky feedback on a non-critical document, and experiment with indifference. Not passive aggression, not silent resentment, but genuine detachment. When the interruption comes, pause, ask silently, does this deserve space in my mind? If not, let it pass like background noise. The goal isn't to become emotionless, it's to reclaim sovereignty over what gets to matter, because every minute spent on trivia is a minute stolen from what could move you forward. The ancient Stoics faced real threats: exile, war, betrayal. Their survival depended on distinguishing battles from distractions. Your modern challenges might lack literal daggers, but the stakes are just as real. Time, energy, focus, these are your finite resources. Spend them where they count, and watch how quickly the trivial fades into irrelevance. That's not just indifference, it's liberation. Seneca's words cut deeper the longer you sit with them. You're dying daily, not as a distant inevitability, but as a quiet erosion happening right now. This meeting you're zoning through, this project you're half-assing, this dream you keep postponing until someday. The Stoics weren't morbid, they were mathematicians of mortality, calculating the true cost of procrastination. Think of it like this: every morning you're handed 24 fresh coins. At midnight they vanish, spent or wasted, with no refunds. Yet we treat time like an infinite resource, squandering hours on distractions we'd never trade for dollars. Consider the deathbed test, a brutal but clarifying lens. Picture yourself decades from now, looking back. Would you regret the extra hours grinding for a promotion no one remembers? Or the missed bedtimes with your kids to answer non-urgent emails? A palliative nurse once recorded the most common dying regrets. "I wish I hadn't worked so hard," topped the list. Not because work is meaningless, but because we confuse motion for meaning. The client who demands last-minute revisions, they'll forget your name in a year. The certification you delayed because it felt daunting, that could have unlocked doors you never saw. Here's the paradox: recognizing life's shortness doesn't shrink your ambition, it sharpens it. When Steve Jobs told Stanford grads, "Death is life's change agent," he wasn't advocating recklessness, he was urging ruthless prioritization. The Stoics called this Momento Mori, applied to calendars. A tech founder I coached used this by writing "last day" atop his weekly planner, not to depress himself but to filter noise, that vague coffee meeting, to catch up. Suddenly, it needed a clear purpose or got declined. The low-impact task he defaulted to, delegated or deleted. Try this today. Pull out your to-do list and cross off anything that wouldn't matter if you had 6 months left. Not as an exercise in nihilism, but in focus. The emails will still multiply, the meetings will still bloat, but your choices can change. Seneca wrote, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The meeting that could have been a Slack message, the commute spent fuming instead of learning, the weekend lost to mindless scrolling, those aren't just wasted hours. They're stolen fragments of a life you'll never get back. So here's the challenge. For 1 week, start each morning by whispering Seneca's reminder, "You're dying daily," then act accordingly. Not with panic, but with precision. Decline what drains you, double down on what ignites you. The Stoics knew a truth we avoid: time isn't slipping away. We're handing it away, piece by piece, to things that won't matter when it's our turn to look back. The clock's ticking, but here's the good news: you're still here, which means it's not too late to spend your coins where they count. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, once said, "No great thing is created suddenly," and he wasn't just talking about building empires or writing masterpieces. He was revealing the Stoic secret to mastering your mind. Think of mental resilience like a muscle. You wouldn't expect to lift 300 pounds after one gym session, yet we often berate ourselves for not staying calm under pressure after a single deep breath. The Stoics treated discipline like athletes treat training, daily, deliberate, and incremental. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up one day with unshakable focus. He honed it through morning reflections, evening journaling, and constant self-interrogation. Take the modern equivalent, morning routines. Most people reach for their phone and flood their brain with noise before their feet even hit the floor. The Stoic alternative, a 5-minute mental drill. Before checking notifications, sit upright and ask 2 questions. What's one thing I'm grateful for today? And what's one obstacle I'm ready to face? This isn't fluffy positivity, it's cognitive priming. Like a boxer visualizing their footwork before a match, you're rehearsing resilience before the day's battles begin. A study in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that employees who practiced similar reflection exercises reported 23% higher focus and 19% lower stress levels. The Stoics didn't need fMRI scans to know this worked. They lived it. But training isn't just about preparation, it's about recovery. After a brutal workout, athletes ice their muscles. After a brutal workday, most of us numb hours with streaming or scrolling. The Stoic cool-down, evening audits. Seneca would end his day dissecting his actions like game film. Where did I react poorly? Where did I waste energy? Not to self-flagellate, but to spot patterns. Maybe you snapped at a colleague because you skipped lunch, or procrastinated because a task felt ambiguous. These aren't failures, they're data points. A Silicon Valley COI coach calls this his error log, noting daily friction to systematically remove it. The key is consistency over intensity. You wouldn't run a marathon once and call yourself fit. Yet we expect one meditation session to cure chronic anxiety. Epictetus trained his students like a sparring coach, small, repeated drills for big results. Try this week's regimen. Each morning, pause before your first sip of coffee to name your intention for the day, not a to-do list, but a mindset. Today, I'll respond, not react. Then, each evening, jot down one moment you lived that intention and one where you strayed. No judgment, just observation. Over time, these micro-practices compound. The executive who starts meetings with a minute of silence isn't being eccentric, they're conditioning their team's focus. The teacher who journals after each class isn't overworking, they're refining their craft. Stoic training isn't about grand gestures, it's about the invisible reps. The cold shower you take not for comfort, but to prove discomfort won't break you. The difficult conversation you initiate not because it's easy, but because avoidance weakens your resolve. Every time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you're not just making a decision, you're sculpting your character. And just as calluses form on hands that grip the barbell daily, mental toughness grows through daily friction. The question isn't whether you're training, it's whether you're training intentionally or letting life's chaos train you by default. Imagine a manager who spends every Monday morning venting about corporate bureaucracy, endless approvals, outdated systems, leadership's indecision. Now picture that same manager 6 months later, running the most efficient team in the company. What changed? They discovered the Stoic secret Stephen Covey, later popularized as the circle of influence. The ancient philosophers drew a clear line between what we control and what we don't, but the real power lies in where we place our focus. That frustrated manager didn't magically fix red tape. They stopped obsessing over it and poured their energy into what they could reshape, their team's workflows, their own communication clarity, even their mindset during delays. Here's how it works. Draw 2 mental circles. The outer one holds everything that bothers you but lies beyond your direct control: market downturns, competitors' moves, your CEO's decisions. The inner circle contains your levers, how you prepare, how you respond, where you invest your attention. the trap most fall into, mistaking the outer circle for reality's boundaries. A sales director I coached kept blaming economic uncertainty for missed targets until we mapped his actual influence. Turns out, he'd neglected LinkedIn outreach, skipped coaching his team on objection handling, and avoided asking happy clients for referrals, all inner circle actions drowned out by his outer circle complaints. The pivot happens when you audit your daily frustrations through this lens. That colleague who never meets deadlines, you can't control their work ethic, but you can set clearer expectations, build in buffer time, or escalate strategically. The software glitch slowing your workflow, you might not fix the code, but documenting its impact and proposing alternatives shifts you from victim to problem solver. Even in extreme cases like a sudden layoff, the inner circle remains. Your network outreach, your skill building, your choice to frame this as an opportunity rather than an injustice. Try this today. Grab a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns, outer circle and inner circle. List your top 3 stressors right now. Under outer, note what you genuinely can't change. Under inner, brainstorm actions within your reach. The executive who hated chaotic meetings didn't wait for HR to implement new rules. She created her own 1-page agenda template and shared it company-wide. The developer, tired of vague project briefs, started hosting 15-minute clarity sprints to align stakeholders upfront. Small, maybe, but small inner circle wins compound into massive momentum. Stoicism's brilliance lies in its practicality. Epictetus, who endured slavery, taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." Covey's adaptation, focusing on influence, not just control, adds a modern twist: actionability. Your circle of influence isn't static, it expands as you exercise it. Every time you choose solutions over complaints, you're not just solving a problem, you're training your mind to spot agency where others see dead ends. So tonight, ask yourself, where did I place my energy today? Outer circle noise or inner circle progress? The answer predicts not just your productivity, but your peace of mind. That manager who stopped ranting about bureaucracy, they're now leading a task force to streamline processes, not because they gained new power, but because they stopped waiting for permission to use what they already had. Your circle of influence is always wider than you think. The question is, will you step into it? The Stoic Fork cuts through indecision like a blade. Either accept a problem fully or change it, but never wallow in complaints. This isn't about passive surrender or blind aggression. It's about clarity in action. Picture a marketing team deadlocked over a campaign direction. Half the members push for bold, provocative messaging. The other half demand conservative, data-driven approaches. Meetings devolve into finger-pointing, with whispers of "they don't get it" echoing in Slack channels. The Stoic leader steps in not with a compromise, but with a fork. We can accept this division and split resources into 2 weaker campaigns, they say, or we can change it by finding the shared goal beneath the disagreement. Then the pivotal question, which path serves the mission? Here's where most teams falter. They mistake complaining for problem solving. Venting about stubborn colleagues or unfair deadlines feels cathartic, but it's emotional debt that compounds. The Stoic Fork forces a reckoning. If you won't accept the status quo, you must act. Not next quarter, not after more data, now. A tech startup CEO faced this when her co-founder consistently dismissed her ideas in meetings. She could have grumbled to mentors or resigned herself to silence. Instead, she invoked the fork. First, radical acceptance. He's not trying to undermine me. He's risk-averse by design. Then, decisive change. She scheduled a one-on-one and framed the conversation around their shared North Star: company survival. When you interrupt me, we lose half our brain power. How can we structure debates so we're leveraging both our strengths? The result, a red flag system where either could call timeouts to revisit discussions with cooler heads. Now turn the lens inward. What have you tolerated instead of addressing? The client who constantly moves goalposts, the teammate who takes credit for your work, complaints about them are just fog obscuring your two real choices. Accept that this is their nature and adjust your expectations. No more frustration when they act predictably, or change the dynamic by setting boundaries, escalating, or even exiting the situation. The fork doesn't judge which path you take. It demands you choose one and commit. Consider the nurse enduring a toxic supervisor's outbursts. Acceptance might mean recognizing, this is her stress response, it's not about me, and developing emotional armor. Change could involve documenting incidents for HR or transferring units. Both paths require courage, whining requires none. The Stoic Fork isn't just a decision tool. It's a mirror revealing how often we hide behind grievances instead of owning our agency. So here's your challenge. Pick one simmering frustration, the friend who always cancels plans, the boss who dismisses your ideas, and apply the fork. Can you genuinely accept this trait without resentment? If not, what's one action you'll take to shift it? Not tomorrow, today. Because every complaint left unchallenged isn't just a missed opportunity, it's a silent vote for your own powerlessness. The Stoics didn't waste breath on blame, they spent it on solutions. Now it's your turn, the fork is in your hand. Will you use it or let it rust? Imagine carrying a Swiss Army knife with 26 specialized tools, each designed to dismantle life's toughest challenges. That's what these Stoic maneuvers offer, a mental toolkit forged in ancient wisdom but razor-sharp for modern struggles. From the dichotomy of control that slices through unnecessary stress to Amor Fati's defiant embrace of adversity, each principle isn't just theory, it's a lever for real change. But here's the catch, mastery isn't about swallowing all 26 at once. It's the cumulative power of small, daily choices, choosing silence over gossip one moment, reframing a setback the next. Like a blacksmith tempering steel, every act of discipline, every pause before reacting, strengthens your resilience incrementally. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who scribbled wisdom between battles, left us a wake-up call. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one, no more hypotheticals, no waiting for the perfect moment to start. The Stoic path begins with a single step, your step. Maybe today it's practicing the reserve clause by adding fate permitting to your big plans, or tonight it's journaling one lesson from the day's stumbles. Progress hides in these seemingly minor acts. The entrepreneur who builds $1 billion empire didn't start by conquering the market. They started by conquering their morning routine. Now the ball's in your court. Scroll back through these 26 maneuvers and grab just one, the one that resonates most with your current battle. Is it negative visualization to disarm anxiety about the future? Or perhaps Sympathia to transform workplace friction into collaboration? Commit to it for 7 days. Not as a test, but as an experiment. Watch how a single Stoic tool, applied consistently, can pry open doors you thought were locked. Your turn. Drop a comment below with the maneuver you're choosing to wield first. Let's build a community of modern Stoics, one practiced principle at a time. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, but every stone laid was a choice. Today, you lay